The city is making strides in response to the problem of youth homelessness. Every night, at least 360 young adults in Boston live in shelters around the streets. For the past year, the city has been working on a plan for youth homelessness with several partners, including the people most affected. To tell us about the plan and new money for housing are the Assistant Director for Supportive Housing in the Department of Neighborhood Development, Courtney Trudell, and the Youth Action Board Facilitator, Ominique Garner. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Courtney, because you have some numbers that seem kind of strange to me, that there are that many people either in shelters or on the street. And I guess that is not the whole picture, isn't that right?
No, it's a point in time. So every year we go out and take a count on one of the coldest nights in January of the number of people that are experiencing homelessness that night. And one of the things that we capture during that count is age. And so in 2018, the people that were between the ages of 18 and 24 were 360. So it's our best estimate of at any given night. We think about 360 youth and young adults may be experiencing homelessness. We also can look at the number of people that have moved in and out of homeless services during the course of a year. If they've come into one of our shelters or if they've been touched by a street outreach team. And that number fluctuates around 800 to 900, depending on the year.
Right. But also here, Ominique, if people ask you, well, who are these young adults? How would you describe them?
So we're the Boston Youth Action Board, a group of youth and young adults that just have been experiencing or currently are experiencing homelessness or housing instability. I just want to say to jump on what Courtney was saying about the data and the numbers. Those numbers are, when people hear that, they're like, wow, that's shocking. But we're not even talking about people that don't touch systems, dealing with domestic violence, immigrant status, those doubled up in couch surfing, which is a major number too. And our group is a very diverse group. Some people are in college. A lot of us are at the shelter, Bridge Over Troubled Waters. That's where we meet for our focus groups and things like that. But a lot of people have been either pushed out of their homes because maybe there wasn't enough room, space-wise, family-wise. Sometimes it's because of criminal records. Sometimes it's because of who they identify as, sexual orientation and gender, so things like that.
And coming back to Courtney, I mean, what I also noticed here, this is not a population that has come to Boston because there weren't any other communities that could help them. These are mostly people from Boston, aren't they?
We generally think that these are people that are from Boston or have made Boston their home, but we don't think that we have enough resources in Boston right now to serve them. Certainly we have a very few number of youth dedicated emergency shelter beds every night. So we do know that they are accessing services in neighboring towns and then coming back here for some of their supported services at Bridge Over Troubled Waters, which Ominique had mentioned, but then also staying on the streets because there isn't an emergency shelter bed that they feel comfortable staying in that evening that they feel is youth appropriate.
Now, one thing I've also noticed, Courtney, I've seen a lot of housing plans before, but this one is unusual because it seems you really made a concerted effort to work with the people who were most involved in the problem. Why was that?
Because it's important. Certainly, even the first question that you asked me when I was responding on the numbers, Ominique quickly pointed out that I had left out the people that are experiencing housing instability, which is a large part of this population, the people that are not touching our system, the ones that we can't easily count, but that we need to plan for. And that kind of insight is what the young adults that were participating in the plan continually brought in again and again in different areas. And so that's sort of one nugget that they brought, but it happened in some of our data discussions. It would happen in discussions around resources for employment and where our services were reaching and not reaching people there, for education, our housing, and healthcare, and other opportunities.
Ominique, the young people here, they weren't just people who were going to get help. They were helping. They knew things that other people didn't know. Wasn't that the case?
Yeah, because we have experience, and it's best to get, I guess, it's best to get the answers from people that have experience, lived experience doing these things, and it's important to have the people that have the power to make change, like executive members of whatever organization it is, and really just talk about what it is that's the problem with that organization or that system, because of what we see, what we are experiencing as a barrier. Sometimes they don't even know it's a barrier to us, or they don't know we're experiencing that thing. Or sometimes when we say why we're experiencing, they're like, oh, this is because of this policy or this rule. But then we're like, oh, does this rule, who made this rule, is it needed? Do we need it? Can we change it? And then sometimes it's a rule that was made and we can remove it. And then sometimes it's something that is needed, but then we learned easily from the older adult with that experience why it was needed.
Because what I also noted is that the needs here are not just housing and services. There are other things, almost more like emotional needs for people. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, one thing I think is exciting, like, so we know that we need all these things to end homelessness. In Boston, for once, we really understood that we need permanent connections in order to end homelessness. Often when people, they hear that youth or young adults are experiencing homelessness, it's like, oh, they just didn't want to listen to their parents, and really they're not thinking deep about this. Usually, we're going through a lot of stuff. Sometimes it's one-parent homes. Sometimes there's abuse. Sometimes it's just, there's different scenarios. It's not so, oh, I didn't get my way and I ran away. But a major thing is a lot of services, sometimes housing first isn't their approach. And we made sure basically with the housing that we put forward, housing first is this. It's not like, oh, you have to go to school or you have to get therapy in order to stay housed. Housing is the main thing. And when we house people first and then worry about their emotional and physical needs later, well, all in one together, then we're taking care of the whole being. So that really makes our plan
What
different.
about that equation, Courtney? Yeah.
So I think for our youth housing demonstration program application to the U.S. Department for Housing and Urban Development, they were really clear about some things that they wanted included. One was that they really wanted to have young adults participating in the process, which was great because that was important to us as well, and we knew that there was a lot of value in that. They also wanted to make sure that we were considering other aspects of the experience, that it wasn't just about creating housing units, but also creating opportunities for people to thrive and setting them up for a lifetime of success and thriving. I think building those partnerships with the other agencies. Boston is a very resource-rich community. We have a lot of nonprofits, a lot of philanthropies. We have very resource-rich state agencies, municipal agencies, and we really brought all of those partners together to think through how they were each touching young adults, not just young adults that are experiencing homelessness, but that they're touching young adults who may or may not be identifying as homeless at that moment or identifying as experiencing housing instability, and talking through about how we can support them long term to create more stable opportunities for them. I think that resonated in our application, and I think that we were able to carry that through a year-long planning process and getting all of these partners together to think through a lot of the barriers and a lot of the opportunities that they had with their own resources and the new resources that we wanted to bring on.
I mean, of course, what housing it means here is that it helps people move ahead in other ways. What does that mean? Like education or getting a job? Or?
Yeah, well, once we're stably housed, then we're able to focus in, not really, it's so much, because then not really worrying about like, how am I gonna pay my bill and all these other aspects, then we could actually focus in on whatever education or career it is that we wanna do. But it's hard to do that to work and be able to focus fully and succeed while dealing with homelessness and housing stability. I mean, we can do it, and we have the YAB hired 5 new facilitators, and we meet every Tuesday, and we're working, and then we have our focus group every second and fourth Tuesday is our bigger group, but it's really meeting people where they're at, providing the necessaries, transportation, food, those things. I started a youth-led action research project with BU, and it was intense in realizing how much assistance is really needed, and especially if someone's capital H homeless, living on the streets, or even doubled up in, we don't know what happens, because if something happens, this person knows they might be capital H homeless the next week. Knowing that the focus isn't always there, fully always there, but yet they are, there's work that they could do, and there's work that we did do. And what is it that we could do to assist them? So meaning that permanent connection, that case manager, whoever, life coach that could call and, oh, this is how you fill out a check, or you're having a problem with this or that. And once the person kind of has a title, whether it be the city title, a university title, there's ways that they can navigate the system for us in ways that we can't do, just because of the stigma that comes with being young and dealing with these issues.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Courtney Trudell from the Department of Neighborhood Development and Ominique Garner from the Youth Action Board. Courtney, there is, in addition to the housing units that were funded, some other things that need to be done. Just identifying people who have the problem. How's the city going to do that? Because there is more that needs to be done in that way, isn't there? Mm-hmm.
Identification is one of the large strategies that we need to take on. One of the ways that we're going to do that is by continuing to work with the partners that we have in our homeless services areas, but also other new partners that we brought on through this plan. So most recently, I've been working closely with Boston Public Schools and talking with them about how they can reach out to identify more students who might be experiencing unaccompanied homelessness. So a little different than being in a family unit and experiencing homelessness, but on their own and experiencing homelessness. Additionally, there are other organizations as well that can start to identify with more intention people who are housing unstable. Workforce development is another area that the mayor's office for workforce development is looking into right now, and some of the programs that they're funding to see how they can convene partners for workforce development and homeless services together to be able to make tighter links between those programs to support identification for one, so that we know that we're asking the right questions, so we are identifying people and then being able to connect them to the services and know where those services are.
Blake, I have to ask you about just the experience of working on this project. What has that done for you?
Amazing. It's brought me growth in many ways. Got me involved, really involved with the community, and seeing how a community planning process goes, organizing, and it helped me when it comes to, I was able to get I got my first ever real job. I'm saying real job, like community job. I was a hairdresser, but I have physical disabilities where I can't do that anymore. But I got my first real job from after speaking on a YAB panel, and many members get job opportunities and stuff like that. So I worked for ABCD and then moved on to starting the youth-led action research project, where I directed that with BU. And it's just amazing opportunities, community organizing, and connections. The personal connections that you get with other leaders in the community is important. So I feel like whatever cause that it is, the people that are most affected should be at the table and dealing with the people that have the decision-making power, and then that decision-making power should be shifted to the people that are most infected.
And you're also doing this in social media, so which page should people look for?
The Boston Youth Action Board.
And Courtney, you have the whole report online as well, and more information about the city's programs. So how can people find that?
We do. It's through the city's webpage, and I think the easiest way to find it is to go to a search engine and put in Rising to the Challenge Boston, and that should bring you to boston.gov webpage that will tell you about the planning process and also has a link for the full plan and even more details about the Youth Action Board as well.
Thank you both very much, Courtney Trudell and Ominique Garner.